When Paul Gauguin was a child, before he was the famous French artist, he was a Catholic student who was learning catechism. He had a particularly rebellious teacher who thought it wise to create his own fundamental questions to guide the decisions of life. Even though Paul did not stay a Catholic his whole life, the questions stayed with him, and the truth of them spoke to him right until his last years and his last day. Painted in Tahiti, the title of the French artist's work, Where do we come from? What are we? Where are we going?
Where do we come from? Where do we come from? What are we? 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 What are we? What are we? Where do we come from? What are we? Where are we going? Where do we come from? What are we? Where are we going? Where do we come from? Where do we come from? Where do we come from? Where are we going? Where do we come from? Where are we going? Where do we come from? Where do we come from? What are we? Where do we come from? What are we? Where do we come from? What are we? Where do we come from? Where do we come from? What are we? Where are we going? Where do we come from? What are we? Where are we going? Where do we come from? What are we? Come from? Where do we come from? Where do we come from? Where are we going? Where do we come from? Where are we going? Where come from? Where we come from? Where are we going? Where do we come from? Where do we come from? What are we? 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 Where do we come from? Where are we going? Where do we come from? Where are we? Where are we going? Where do we come from? What are we? Where are we going? Where do we come from? Where do we come from? Where do we come from? Where are we going? Where do we come from? Where do we come from? We come from. What are we?
Welcome to the First Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Ann Arbor, Michigan. My name is Kari Gottfried, and I currently serve this community as an undergraduate student intern. Whether you've been attending our services since we were meeting in person, have been worshiping with us virtually, or just clicked on the YouTube video and don't really know what you're doing here, you are welcome. You are welcome here regardless of your religious background, regardless of who you are or who you love, regardless of your abilities and gifts and growing edges. You are welcome here because you are you, and because we are committed to building a world that is more just, more peaceful, more full of courageous love than any to come before it. You are welcome here. In the words of Rumi, who many of us regard as deeply prophetic, even if you have broken your vows 10,000 times, come, yet again, come. Today, we explore what it means to be a prophet. As Unitarian Universalists, the sources of our living tradition call on us to learn from the words and deeds of prophetic people. Of course, these people are theologians, justice leaders, and wise ancestors. And they are musicians, doctors, children, water protectors, grandparents, most anyone you can think of. Just like our ideas about a higher power or an afterlife, our faith calls on us to think of what a prophet is in the most expansive definition of the term. I like to define a prophet as someone who thinks deeply about the world and takes action to make it a better place. Maybe this person is a minister, or maybe they're a TV scientist. In the 2019 service of the Living Tradition, an annual worship service that honors Unitarian Universalist religious leaders, the Reverend Lindy Ramsden was the invited preacher. She wove prophetic voices through her sermon, and for those who have seen the service, there is one prophetic voice in particular that stands out. To channel him, she removes her stole and dons a white lab coat and tie. Reverend Ramsden, quoting an expletive-laden tirade that Bill Nye the Science Guy gave on John Oliver's late-night show Last Week Tonight, was not what anyone imagined when they sat down to participate in one of the most sacred services we recognize as a denomination. Not just quoting Bill Nye the Science Guy, but turning into him, while preaching to one of the largest audiences Reverend Ramsden will probably ever preach in front of, was a risk. It was a faithful risk, one that led me to finally understand what it means to be a prophet. When we expand our idea of prophetic, the possibilities are endless. During this service, I invite you to take a leap of faith with me, to begin to reimagine this source of our living tradition.
The Reverend Charles R. Joy fits Kari's definition of a prophet, someone who thinks deeply about the world and takes action to make it a better place. We might not readily recognize his name, but it was because of his actions almost 80 years ago that we as Unitarian Universalists light chalices today as a symbol of our faith. You see, in 1941, Reverend Joy worked for the Unitarian Service Committee, a newly formed organization that was helping refugees escape persecution from the Nazis during World War II. The refugees had nothing and desperately needed travel documents. Reverend Joy wanted the Service Committee papers to have an official seal, so he commissioned artwork from Austrian artist Hans Deutsch, who drew the flaming chalice. While that was a long time ago, that prophetic deed remains with us. The chalice eventually became used as a logo for the Unitarian Universalist Association. So whenever we light the chalice, we are reminded of this prophetic moment in history and of our ongoing commitment to justice work, especially for those who are most vulnerable. We can be part of that history right now. If you have your own chalice or candle, please join me as I light this chalice for the gathered community. Let us speak together our chalice lighting words. We light this chalice for the light of truth. We light this chalice for the warmth of love. We light this chalice for the energy of action. We light this chalice for the harmony of peace. May it be so. As a community, we also speak together the words of our covenant, words that remind us of our commitment to each other and of how we want to be in relationship with each other. You may be new to us and are trying out these words for the very first time. Or maybe you have said them so many times you've lost count. Today, as you say them, hear your own voice as a prophetic voice. Let us say together, the spirit of this church is love, and service is its law. This is our covenant with each other, to dwell together in peace, to search for truth in love, and to help one another.
Selections from She Persisted, written by Chelsea Clinton, illustrated by Alexandra Boyger. Sometimes being a girl isn't easy. At some point, someone probably will tell you no, will tell you to be quiet, and may even tell you your dreams are impossible. Don't listen to them. These American women certainly did not take no for an answer. They persisted. After her family fled poverty and the threat of violence in Ukraine for a new home in New York City, Clara Lemlich got a job working at a garment factory. She wrote that the factory's conditions made women into machines, and so she persisted, organizing picket lines and strikes that ultimately helped win better pay, shorter hours, and safer working conditions for thousands of workers, both women and men. She once said, "I am one of those who suffers from the abuses described here, and I move that we go on general strike." After Maria Tallchief's family moved to California, partly to support Maria's dream of becoming a dancer, she was teased by students in school for her Native American heritage, and later was encouraged to change her last name to something that sounded Russian, since many professional dancers at that time were from Russia. She persisted, ignoring all the taunting and poor advice, to become the first great American prima ballerina. She once said, "It never occurred to me to say, it hurts to do that." As a 15-year-old riding a bus home from school in Montgomery, Alabama, Claudette Colvin was expected to give up her seat to a white woman just because she was African American. In her refusal to get up, she persisted in taking a stand for what's right, helping to inspire Rosa Parks to make the same choice 9 months later, an act many point to as starting the modern civil rights movement. She once said, "I knew then and I know now that when it comes to justice, there is no easy way to get it. You can't sugarcoat it. You have to take a stand and say, this is not right." Sally Ride always believed women could succeed in any math or science career. Although not everyone agreed, she persisted, and she became the first American woman in space. But that wasn't enough for Sally. She traveled into space once more and then created science and engineering programs, specifically for girls so she could help generations of young women achieve their dreams too, both on Earth and in outer space. She once said, "Young girls need to see role models in whatever careers they may choose, just so they can picture themselves doing those jobs someday. You can't be what you can't see." Watching fictional judges on television inspired Sonia Sotomayor to want to be a real-life judge when she grew up. She knew she'd have to speak English as well as she spoke Spanish, study hard in school, and manage her diabetes before she could one day wear a judge's robe with a gavel in hand. She persisted, eventually becoming a Supreme Court justice and the first ever Latina to sit on America's highest court. She once said, "I have never had to face anything that could overwhelm the native optimism and stubborn perseverance I was blessed with." So, if anyone ever tells you no, if anyone ever says your voice isn't important or your dreams are too big, remember these women and more. They persisted, and so should you. The end.
Help make a difference in the lives and the families and the hands, the hearts that are joining around the state to make a difference for love and justice in the world. Today, we're raising money for Michigan Unitarian Universalist Social Justice Network, or MUSJN, as a part of our Sharing the Collection campaign, something we do every month to assure that we are not the only beneficiaries of our resources to bring love alive in the world. You can find out more information about this prophetic network that is helping link Unitarian Universalists to Unitarian Universalists and communities to communities so that our difference is stronger and more palpable for our children and our children's children. You can find out more information about them and all of the places we reach out to this year at UUAA.org/sharing the collection. And to give, go to UUAA.org/giving. Together, we can make a difference that any one of us could never do alone. So we must. I thank you for your generosity.
How's that look? Okay, now I'm going to need your help with this, because in order to share what Bill Nye told his audience in a manner that is suitable for tonight's worship service, I will need your help. So when I wave my hands, would you please call out a loud bleep? So let's practice. You ready? Bleep. Very good. One more time. Ready? Bleep. Okay. All right, let's try this. First, you have to imagine there's a globe over here, and I'm taking a blowtorch to it, and it's burning. By the end of this century, if emissions keep rising, the average temperature on Earth could go up another 4 to 8 degrees. What I'm saying is the planet is on fire. There are a lot of things we could do to put it out. Are any of them free? No, of course not. Nothing's free, you idiots. Grow the up. You are not children anymore. I did not mind explaining photosynthesis to you when you were 12. But you are adults now.
and this is an actual crisis. Got it? Thank you. Yep, we got it. The reality is sinking in part because so many more of us are starting to directly experience the consequences. As Bill and I taught the late-night audience some climate science, perhaps we can ask John Oliver to line up another guest professor to teach the second half of the lesson, one on climate justice. America must understand that those both within and beyond our nation who are most vulnerable to climate disasters, those who have the least access to resources to prepare, survive, rebuild, and recover, are also those who have made the smallest contributions to causing this hot mess. Climate injustice is layered on top of centuries of colonialism and conquest, stolen land, enslaved labor, and indigenous genocide. There are important signs of progress, but there still is such a long way to go to acknowledge and honorably address the historic need for truth-telling, for reparations and healing. But now is the time to go all in, to think big, to address foundational issues. Massive public and private resources will be mobilized. The question is where and in whose interest will those investments be made? It is so important to leverage this moment and this time of gathering momentum to advance equity, to create climate justice. It is time now, and what a time to be alive.
Dear ones, whose prophetic fire do you look to lead Unitarian Universalism into the future? Who comes to mind? A year ago, September, I was asked this very question during my meeting with the Unitarian Universalist Ministerial Formation Committee. That's the group that decides if someone is ready to be welcomed into preliminary fellowship as a Unitarian Universalist minister. They had many questions that day. This one I felt confident in answering. Whose prophetic fire do you look to lead Unitarian Universalism into the future? I named two individuals who were my teachers in seminary, whose wisdom and vision have made an impact on me, on the denomination, and on the world. The Reverend Bill Sinkford and the Reverend Leslie Takahashi. I would like to share with you some words that Reverend Sinkford addressed to my seminary class, to us as future leaders. He wrote, "We are called to both love the world as it is and the world as it should be. To say that differently, we are required to help the world see its brokenness, even when the world would look away. And we are required, as well, to hold a vision of hope, even when hope is hard to find. We are called to act as if love were real, and by our living make it so. We must be able to at least offer glimpses to inspire and motivate." And then he quoted the end of Leslie Takahashi's poem, Marginal Wisdom. "The day is coming when all will know that the rainbow world is more gorgeous than monochrome, that a river of identities can ebb and flow over the static, stubborn rocks in its course, that the margins hold the center. Settle into your body self now in whatever way is most comfortable, seated, standing, or moving about. If you wish, close your eyes or leave them open. In the silence that we hold together, think about the prophetic voices, past or present, in your own life. Who do you look up to, listen to? Whose words or deeds shape you, inspire you, motivate you, or give you hope? Let us enter a time of silence together. Return from the silence. Take the time you need. Spirit of compassion, love, and wisdom of all that is holy. Remind us that hopelessness is not an option. Remind us of the wisdom of those we call prophets, who tell us we must hold on to a vision of hope. Remind us that we each have a prophetic voice and that we each can make courageous choices to help mend this broken world. Great Spirit, give us the strength to do this work. May it be so. Amen. If you are here with me this Sunday morning, would you help me now in building a tower of hope by typing into the chat the names of those you recalled during the meditation? Help us create that tower, each name a new block that adds to the foundation of our growing community.
The words and deeds of prophetic people challenge us to confront powers and structures of evil. Our prophets urge us away from complacency and into action, guiding us with justice, compassion, and the transforming power of love. The song, Come, Come, Whoever You Are, one of our most well-known gathering songs, was written by the Reverend Lynn Unger from a poem that is widely attributed to Rumi. However, it is more likely that it was written by someone named Abu Sa'id Abul Khair. He was, like Rumi, a Sufi mystic, a poet, and a Muslim. And that last part, that both were Muslim, is a key part, because it is the part that is so often left out when talking about their poetry. Their religious identity cannot be separated from the poetry, yet it has been. And for those of us who read Rumi's poetry in English, we would never know the difference. The most popular translation, and I use that word loosely, of Rumi's poetry is the collection by Coleman Barks, who rewrote Rumi's words from a previously translated version through the lens of American Christianity, the tradition that Barks was raised in. These translations, done without the context of Rumi's deeply beloved Islam upbringing, erase much of the original meaning from the poems. Even the words of our beloved hymn, Come, Come, have been stripped of their original religious meaning. The original words are better translated to mean, even if you are an infidel or idol worshiper, come again. Rumi wasn't just saying that everyone was welcome. He was expressly drawing the circle wider to include those who rejected the religion he loved so very much. Reading the original Farsi or Arabic, or for those of us who don't understand those languages, simply a more accurate translation, brings so much more theological depth to a prophet whose words we draw so much from. We must recognize all of the identities of our prophets to fully accept their words and deeds of wisdom. We must work to understand the most expansive definition of what it means to be a prophet. In 2018, Unitarian Universalists voted to change the language of this source from prophetic women and men to prophetic people. This change affirms what we already knew, that people of all genders and no gender can be and are and have been prophets. Our expansive definition of prophet includes people of many genders, many cultures, many faith backgrounds. Their ability to be prophets is not predicated on their identities, but they are an important part of their stories. Prophets think deeply about the world and take action to make it a better place, not despite their identities, but because of them. Would Bill Nye or Lindy Ramsden speak so prophetically about the state of the world and the urgency of climate change if they didn't care about science? Would Sonia Sotomayor have made it to the Supreme Court without the identities that shaped her journey and determination? Would Leslie Takahashi or Bill Sinkford be the prophetic leaders in Unitarian Universalism that they are without their deep commitments to anti-oppressive and anti-racist work? And would Rumi's poetry speak to something so deep in our hearts if he had less of a love for Islam? I would say the answer is an emphatic no. Prophetic voices shape our faith, not because what they said is nice or easy to hear. They shape our faith because of the perspective they bring to Unitarian Universalism, a religion that, at its best, welcomes people of all backgrounds, not despite of what they bring to the table, but because of it. You've reflected on the prophets in your life, in your faith, in the world that you admire. Who are they? And what can you learn from them? From how they laugh and move and live and love? And how can you take the wisdom they share, identities and all, and use it to make the world a better place?
Come, come, whoever you are. Wanderer, worshiper, lover of living. Ours is no caravan of despair. Ours is no caravan of despair. Come yet again, come yet again, come yet again. Though you've broken your vows 1,000 times, 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 wanderer, worshiper, lover of living, yet again come. Come, come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshipper, lover of living, ours is no care of and of despair. Come, yet again come. Though you've broken your vows 1,000 times, 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 come, come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshipper, lover of living, ours is no care of and of despair. Come, yet again come. Come, come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshipper, lover of living, ours is no care of and of despair. Come, yet again come. Though you've broken your vows 1,000 times, 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 though you've come, come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshipper, lover of living, ours is no care of and of despair. Again come, yet 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 1,000 times, though you've broken your vows 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 1,000 times, though you've broken your
Whether you are a wanderer, worshiper, or a lover of leaving, whatever you are, we hope that you will continue with us in this community. Please join us after the service by going to UUAA.org/social hour. And if you're a newcomer, let our hosts know so you can be invited to a special room just for you. Again, that's UUAA.org/social hour. You can also stay connected by liking UUAA.org on Facebook and joining our closed Facebook group and following us on Twitter and Instagram at @UU_Ann Arbor. There is no translation of "come, come, whoever you are" that will be fully accurate in English. But a fuller translation of the poem says that whether you are an infidel, a heretic, or an idol worshiper, come again. He says, this home of ours is not a home of hopelessness. As we know, he was a Muslim, but those words ring true for our Unitarian Universalist faith too. This home of ours is not a home of hopelessness. Hopelessness is simply not an option. We hope that you will come again. And until then, go on your way and be blessed as you are a blessing to others.